So that's the hero in you.
Yes,
Taking
but
out the brunt.
but the
you
wrong
used
hero.
it for the
It's
wrong
hero.
hero. You wanted where it was like all the glory, or you wanted
Exactly.
it like thinking that you would get your back patted all the time.
That's right.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Human Blueprint, and I think we have a story to tell. Do we not?
Han has a story to share.
Oh, we're nerd too. Don't act
Okay.
like you don't have a story.
You can ladies first, right?
Yeah, I think today's story that we wanted to talk about was victim mode, and that was something that I came into realization that I was doing, and then that I wasn't aware of, and even to share, maybe where I picked it up from. So things were happening around my life, and I just didn't understand why it was happening. I felt like helpless at times. It affected my body. It affected my health, even my mood. Right?
No comment.
Perfect answer from the husband. And I would have to say that with Herman's help, he made me realize that I was playing the victim, and I was in this victim mode, and that was so powerful to be able to see, because I probably have done that like for all of my life or most of my life.
But when it was presented to you, what did you do?
It clicked in, and I had this aha moment, and I remembered, I was like, oh wow, like it was the exact same thing that I complained about my mother. And it was funny because I was just like, oh my goodness, when you told me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the exact same thing that I had said to her, stop doing that. You don't make those type of comments, or you shouldn't be that way. And it was such a big shock that I was doing that. But it's not uncommon for us to do that. But even then, like I didn't have that awareness. That was what it was.
And we don't realize that we learn things from those that we spend the most amount of time with. So you spent a lot of time growing up with your mom?
Yes.
So where did you learn a lot of those habits from?
From my family.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people who are immigrants, like most of us all are, we tend to have that victim mindset. Because someone who has more experience, who had done it maybe a little longer, their business was around a little longer, we always say, well, they did it, or it works out for them, or look how easy they have it.
So were they really the victim, or is that just their belief system?
Both. Because a lot of times the belief system is what makes them the victim. And when they feel like they're a victim, then the belief system is always rotten. So they'll allow other things to set in, a lot of other weeds, false beliefs, false half-truths, so to speak, to set in. And then they pass that on to their children.
Yes, it got passed on to me as well.
Right?
Same thing with my mom. Right? She kept on saying how terrible things were in life. Like this, there's never anything good. It's always bad. And as a child, you listen to this and you think, well, the world is really bad, and you got to go fight for your stuff, and it's just basically just really, it's never about to share or to ask for help. So that was my big thing, is that I just don't ask for help. So I had to learn how to ask for help. Even asking Han for help was difficult, which is really, really strange in a relationship, right? That it's your partner. You're supposed to be a team. Yet I look at me as having to do everything, And I was like, where the heck did I get this from? I was like, oh crap, it's my mom. Right? Always trying to do everything on her own, and then, but it keeps that victim story true. If you have to do it on your own and nobody's there to help you, therefore you're just by yourself, and anything that it's always you against the world. So, but once we become more aware of it, we've made some more changes. And Han calls me out. If I don't ask for help, then she actually basically calls me out.
What happens when you don't listen to Han? What does she threaten?
Well, either you or your father.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't really matter which one it is.
Yeah, and the good thing is it worked because he really respects you and your father. But I find that as we continue to grow, those threats become less and less, right? And I would say like I really have to give you credit. I think you've grown a lot, and I think
you could do that.
And I would say, you know, you really do reflect, and you really do, you know, take it more seriously, and you really do consider when I do call you out.
Well, also I look at things. I know how my mom turned out, and she's a great mom. She's a great mom, but I also know what she's dealing with right now at her age, and it's probably not going to change too much. I don't want to end up like that.
Yeah.
Right. And my poor dad is dealing with how she acts and how she believes. So that was enough for me to reflect and say, okay, something has to change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
But even like with the victim mode, like I find it doesn't have to be something so big. It could be even something as small as, let me give you an example. So my sisters, we were at my sister's wedding, and then so Bernard sat in a spot where it was a Chinese wedding, so they served like the meals, and so the server came, and so the server was right here, and Bernard had to sort of squish himself over, so he was really uncomfortable, and so he felt like he had to endure, you know, and contort his body while she was serving the 10-course meal. And then and I think, you know, he was sort of like agitated a little bit, and I said, so afterwards, like the next day, and I said, oh, you know, like you didn't seem that comfortable. And he said, well, you know, we wouldn't be comfortable too if you had to sit and sit the
I was
way.
holding my plate practically in my lap. Right? There's like,
Well, is there any other way to hold your plate?
no, it's on my lap, and there's things. Okay,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, and I said to him, I said, well, why didn't you just ask the rest of the table to move, you know, if there was any space? And he said, and he didn't have a good answer. What did you say?
No, I just said it inconvenience everybody else because everybody's already squished.
But then to find out that, you know, someone else at the table was talking about how much room he had, right? So in my mind, I just said, well, B, did you know that so-and-so who sat across from you had so much space? And of course he didn't know that. And I turned to him and I said, you know, well, why do you always feel like you have to take on so much all the time and carry that burden? That's always the theme with you, right? Like being the one to never ask for help, and then seeing yourself in a role of the victim afterwards. And instead of saying, hey, is there more space? Is there more room? And just asking the rest of the table.
See, I was about to defend myself, but then I realized if I defended myself, then I was going back to that same mode. So
Yeah.
I just thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, crap. I could have just asked.
Instead of holding your plate, right?
Those are
Like,
big plates.
okay, but just like I thought to myself, wow, like, you know, like so and so just talked about how much space he had and how great he yeah.
And one thing that we don't tend to give a lot of credit towards is how amazing we actually are. And so when we lose sight of that, that's when the victim mode kicks in. When we lose sight of what we're actually capable of, what we can actually do. When we lose sight of that, then we become a greater victim. And that's something you have to learn to overcome.
So it's almost as if I don't ask for help, it's in my head. It's almost like I'm the hero, because you don't need help.
Okay.
No, but I'm just thinking
Yeah.
through what was going through my head, right? Obviously, it's not the correct way, but I was just thinking through my head. It's like, okay, if I don't inconvenience anyone, then I'm taking the brunt of everything, and therefore I'm a hero. I'm better. But in the end, it's just so stupid. So that's why I didn't argue with Han, right? When she said that, she was like, oh, crap, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the hero in you.
Yes,
Taking
but
out the brunt.
but the
You
wrong
used
hero.
it for the
It's
wrong
hero.
hero. You wanted where it was like all the glory, or you wanted
Exactly.
it like thinking that, you know, you would get your back patted all the time.
That's right. I wanted to take that last shot, even though it was a terrible shot.
So your victim mode is like you always wanting to be that hero and taking things on.
Well, that's like my mom.
Yeah. And and for me, being a victim is just seeing myself as a victim, like seeing things being done to me, seeing things that I have no control over or control of, and feeling that there's not a way out, or it's a struggle to get out of it. And that's exactly like my mom.
And your mom is also very critical.
Yes. And I realize that I'm also critical, but it's not even, and I wasn't aware of that. You know, and it shows up in different ways as well. So I think that's the danger in itself, because not everyone see me as being critical. And I have people telling me that I'm very positive. I walk around with a smile, but it takes, you know, and thanks to you that you're able to sort of point out, like, to me, hey, you're actually being quite critical, or you're seeing things in a negative way, and then it just really hit me that I was doing that in different ways.
But one thing you didn't mention was how it was shared. It wasn't just said, Han, you know what? You're so critical, you're so judgmental, and then with an attitude.
Oh,
Because
yes, no.
when you share it that way, then the person's going to shut down. But when it's shared in a meaningful way, when it's shared in a way that has no ill intent, then the person can receive the message to how you intend it to be.
Yes,
Right?
that's right. And I think, and it had to come from you. To be honest, I think for me, it had to come from you, because I know your intention. And one thing I really love about you is that you're always so, it's your delivery. It's always about your delivery that has really helped me grow so much. And when I hear it, and I know is the intention is always to help me grow. So when I hear it, I always work on that and work to be a better person.
It's funny, because when I speak with you, there's things where you tell me, I'm like, oh, I knew that.
And you have used
But
that word.
yeah, because just in my head, I'm like, oh, I knew that, and he didn't need to tell me that. Like, I already knew this. Like, what's the point of this? But when I calm down and start thinking about it, it's like, no, I didn't. Like, I thought I knew it, but if I really knew it, I would have done something about it. Let's be honest here. So it was just the delivery. Even though I think I knew it, but when you deliver it, it had to sink in.
But it's also opening the certain doors that you have closed. Those channels that have been blocked. Right? That's why when you can use your voice as a tool, or you can use it as a weapon.
So it wasn't this information. If it was this information, I think everybody would have solved all the problems by now.
Yeah.
So for me, it took me like a couple of times to actually realize that I was being the victim. And you were trying to help me through that. But I feel like you had to knock down like a couple of doors in order to actually, for me to actually see it. Because the first time you told me, I could see it, but I couldn't really see it as clearly. But then the more and more I went on, I saw it more and more. And I started to identify, like, oh, I would like hear your voice and like, wait, I just did that. And it would make more and more sense. So it wasn't like, oh, I knew that, but I didn't know it. And I was like, I guess it's because I was consumed by it. The victim was like a part of me. and I wasn't even aware of it until you brought it out.
But the dangerous part is people, especially like around your age or younger, most of them walk around with like their chins held high as if like they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
You just begin in life. How can you know everything in the world? You haven't even figured it out. You haven't experienced the harsh experiences that those that came before us experienced. How do we know everything about life? But once we get out of your own way and we're able to let that piece of yourself go so that you can actually listen, then what happens?
The victim doesn't have a place to live.
Because you no longer feed in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to listen twice as much as you speak, because you always have to pay attention. You always have to ensure that you're making the right choice to grow, because if not, then you're going to go the opposite direction and you begin to die too young, or certain parts of you die, or certain parts of the creativity are no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's very important for you to, if you can do it once, like you said, well, it finally clicked, that means you can do it for all the other times.
Yeah.
And then there's no excuse. Right? But a lot of people in the victim mode, they have a whole category of an excuse for another excuse. That excuse attaches to this excuse. That excuse goes to that excuse. And they build this whole fictitious mindset, psyche on this excuse to make them believe that it's okay to be that victim.
And the most interesting part is they are not a part of any of those excuses. Everything's an outside circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why me? Like, why, this happened to me, or my family wasn't as fortunate, or
Mm-hmm.
it's never them.
It's like when you look at anything in life, you always have to look at the hand you're dealt. So let's say we all had cards and like you had like a certain hand, she had a certain hand, he had a certain hand. And people are in a competition. Does the person who's in the competition at the final table for the big prize complain and tell everybody, you know what, my cards are no good? Do they show the person that they're no good?
No.
Do they give you any signal to show you that they're struggling?
Poker face.
Do they give you a signal to tell you that you know what, I need help? No. But yet, what do? They take the hand they have and they learn to play the long game. Everyone's only focused on the short game. Instant. And when they don't get it, oh, poor me, then the victim takes over.
Mm-hmm.
But if we play the long game and say, you know what, we didn't get it this time, but this is what I learned. We didn't get that second time, but you know what, this is what I learned. Now I have his tell. Now I have her tell. Now I know how to get the third hand. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that you never just settle for the hand that you're given, but you learn to make best of what you have, and then you learn to learn and grow, and then leverage to get into a better position. It's called pivot.
I think that's really key, because I've seen poker players with terrible hands. Well, you don't see the terrible hands, but only when they reveal it. Well, holy hell, did this guy win this? But that's exactly that. They just kept building up.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when you're in that place and you look at your hand, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's just be honest. Sometimes it just sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to what you're saying, if you just play that hand as best as possible, you can always move on and upgrade. But most people, including myself, never thought about that way.
No.
We just look at, this is the hand, it sucks, I hate everything.
Yeah.
And you just forget about moving on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then the victim just takes over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it's a different side of you that comes out. A side of you that wants all the negative things, a side of you that wants all the pity things.
Yeah. You want people to feel bad for you.
There's a comfort in that. There's a great comfort in people feeling like you get the attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, poor you. It's like, oh, yeah, you're getting attention.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We see that with your nieces and nephews sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it is learned at a young age.
See?
They pick it up. They pick it up, and again, we're not the parents, so we don't really we don't fall for it, but we can see the habits already.
Yeah.
building up.
Well, the other day, like, I took my niece for a walk, and she was playing happy one moment, and then she fell, and then it hurt, of course, so she started crying. But then as soon as I distracted her, and I was just like, hey, like, look over there, like, what's in that little, and so she just stopped crying. So she was no longer crying because she was a victim, you know, because she's fallen down. So I guess it's all, you know, how you can change your perspective as well.
Exactly. And that's why we have to be very careful with these lenses, what we project and what we intake. Because if we don't have a filter as to what we project and what we intake, then we'll project anything we want, whether fake or real, mostly fake, right? So that other people think you have something that you don't have, or you are someone that you aren't. And then when it comes to intake, you have to be very cautious to make sure that there's a filter. Does this belong here? Does this not? Is this going to help me grow? Is it not? Is it good? Is it good to have it, or is it not? Is it conducive to growth? No. So that's why you have to have a filter. But most people don't have that. They just see something, oh, absorbed it. Hear something, absorbed it.
So how do you build that filter? Like, how do you, you know, because not everyone will be able to, like, I wasn't aware, right? So, you know, what could an average person do to create that filter?
Well, number one, get rid of the distractions. So what my father did with me is he's like, oh, you think you have perfect vision? So I've had 20/20 vision my whole life. Oh, you think you have perfect vision? Let's put a blindfold. Now you tell me what you see. Oh, you have perfect hearing? Let's put in some earplugs. Now you tell me what I'm saying upstairs in a whisper. Right? You force yourself to grow that way. You force yourself to put yourself in a certain situation to grow.
Okay, I don't think the average person is going to start blindfolding themselves and try to see through things, but I think I get your idea as there's always things we can improve on. There's always, doesn't matter what situation we're in, we can always improve on it. And just forcing yourself or just doing it. Just saying, hey, look, I want a little bit more. I'm just going to push myself a little more. Why not?
Right? So you have to just learn to manage the hand that you're dealt and think the long-term game as what you can do to get closer to it. Some may take a little longer. Some may get it a little sooner, but we don't compare. What we do is just focus on what we have to do to get the job done. And if that's growing, never stop.
Yeah, I think there's power in taking responsibility for your hand as well.
Well, you got control. When you're a victim, there's no control.
Yeah. And and what's really helped me was that even, so I started to reframe things, you know, after when you pointed it out to me. And I started just seeing things more differently and just taking that power back and not seeing myself as a victim. Like, I feel physically better. Like, physically, I feel better. Mentally, I feel better. And there is a shift. And it doesn't take that long either.
No. Especially when you have help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do our best to keep each other accountable.
That's important.
I think we're a pretty good team.
We're pretty good. I think we're good in the sense that we know each other's crap. We know our excuses.
Know the games.
We know
The tricks, the game.
She knows the games that I play. I know the games that she plays.
Yeah.
When we're so used to that, then it's easier to call each other out without making them feel terrible.
Yeah.
It becomes actually kind of funny.
Yeah. So I think, like, for us now, like, we've like, you know, before we would be really offended, but now it's like we've kind of make it like lighthearted because we know that we both want the best for each other, right? So when I make these threats of calling Herman, you know, or calling Dr. Sue, it's actually quite funny, and I say with a smile, but behind that smile is some truth. Yeah, but I would say, you know, like, we don't take offense to that, and I think we've both grown to know that we want the best for each other. And
So one thing that the listeners or the people watching can learn from your experience on how not to be that victim.
be honest. I think that's one of the big keys for me, at least, is just look at your life and figure out what you can improve on, and just be honest about that, and then looking at what you can do about it, because there's always something you can do about it. And that was a big turning point for me.
And I think for myself, and knowing my bad habits, is to not being like offended so easily. I think, you know, everyone loves to hear nice words. Everyone loves to hear praises, right? But when you have areas where you can grow and someone wants to share something with you, to give it some thought, and to, you know, and of course, like, and just to be open to hearing the not so pleasant things.
I'd probably say when you feel yourself getting petty or being a victim, to do something about it right away. So do like push-ups, do a horse stance, do something to keep yourself in check and not let it grow, but also get the support, like get the guidance, because if you can't see it and if you're blinded by it, then you're not gonna go as far as fast.
And everyone uses the term misery loves company. So when you feel miserable and you look at the people around you that are miserable, maybe it's trying to tell you something's got to change, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's a good indicator.
Big time.
Yeah.
But most people will never be able to see it because they don't want to see it.
Yeah. I think that's a good indicator. So if you're kind of looking at your life and you're feeling a certain way and everyone around you is feeling a certain way, so that's like what you always call it, what, like code red or an alert?
There's a red flag.
That's a red flag, right? Because you're sort of attracting that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good barometer.
Awesome. Do you guys have any other questions?
I think I'm good.
I think we're good.
Good for now, yeah.
Bernard's good.
That's
Go
enough.
ahead.
Wonderful. Well, let's keep talking in the comments. We want to hear from you. Have you ever been the victim? Are you still the victim? What are you doing to not be that victim? Let's keep the conversation going. And just be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.